Okay. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I stand between you and lunch, which I know is a great responsibility, and I hopefully will make this very worth your while. I'll just get the clicker. Thank you. Yeah. There we go. So, controversially, should every product be a Web3 product? Why am I asking this question, and I guess what's my background? So I've been running a software development company for the last 10 years, and obviously that's predominantly Web2. Over the last few years, we've been specializing in Web3, and one of the things that we found interesting is actually trying to help people understand where to use Web3, where does it add the most value, how do you fit it into a product, is it the right thing for you? So what I'm going to try and do today is give you a sense of our framework that we use. Hopefully that will guide you in your own decisions, whether you're building a Web3 native product or whether you're building a Web2 product with some Web3 features. So just to get us all aligned, I think there are some really obvious use cases where Web3 is the right solution. I think we can all agree that finance certainly is, and just a show of hands, how many people hold crypto or are involved in DeFi, just out of interest? Okay, that's reassuring. Okay, very good. So finance, I think we all agree, decentralization in Web3 has lots of benefits, and it's a very logical place for us to start. Art and entertainment, I think, also is a very obvious candidate for Web3. Not just NFTs, but renting assets, trading assets with each other, the distributed gaming world, the play-to-earn economy, all the things that make sense around NFTs, I think, are also logical places for Web3 to add value. For everything else, though, I think it's worth a conversation to understand, actually, where can it add the most value for a business or for a product? So, for me, coming at it from a decade's worth of experience in software development, it's got to add value and it's got to add utility. We're not interested in Web3 for hype's sake, and we want to make sure that the people that use it are using it for the right reasons. So the framework that we've developed has these components to it, which I'm going to walk you through now. We're obviously on a relatively tight timescale, so if you'd like any more information about this, just catch me afterwards and I'll happily share the deck and share some more insights. But essentially, we'll talk through the functional differentiation, the economic drivers, how you can build brand advocacy, and one of the areas that I think is kind of overlooked at the moment, which is how you can build business resilience using Web3 as well. So, starting with functional differentiation, some of this might be obvious, but I just want to stress, actually, looking at Web3 as a functional improvement on Web2 is really important. One of the key areas is obviously around identity and ownership. Now, verifying identity in a Web2 world, we essentially do this through middlemen providers. And this might be signing in with Google, it might be signing in with Facebook. You've got to rely on those identities to give you the information you need. And actually, there are lots of reasons why sometimes that's quite problematic. In a Web3 world, you don't necessarily need to do that. You can build true identity verification that uses the blockchain to give you much greater certainty over the people that are using your product, and that has lots of trust-based benefits to it as well. In terms of the next two items, hopefully these are fairly obvious, but I think explaining the contrast between the two is helpful. So moving from a world where we have to trust that you own something through to a world where you truly own something, I think this is still something that as an industry we're struggling to communicate. And I think lots of people, when we hear about NFTs and we hear about other terminology and nomenclature, I think they just get stuck on it. If you say it's a way of truly understanding if you own an asset, I think it cuts through a lot more. And whether that's real estate, whether it's law, or whether it's commerce, it's something we absolutely need, and it's where Web3 can add a lot of value. And the last item is could be true versus actually true. There are lots of things in our lives where we really need to know that the data is bang on the money. Obvious examples including healthcare, but it also expands out into our economic, into our political system as well. It was interesting listening to Matt Hancock speak earlier. I think Web3 can transform how government operates, and I think as a foundation and a bedrock of trust and transparency, in 10, 15 years' time, I think most democracies around the world will be using some component of Web3. So this is the functional reasons for using it. There are obviously lots of economic reasons, and I think everybody in the crowd probably gets this, but for people that are watching this stream, crypto and Web3 are not the same thing, and they are not mutually exclusive. Yes, crypto is an important part of Web3, but you can have all the things I'm talking about without it. If you are going to use crypto, though, I think it's about saying, what's the purpose of it? And it, again, moving us away from cash-based payments to crypto-based payments increases the size of the market, increases your customer base, lets you differentiate through new product offerings. It's super exciting, and we're really just scratching the surface of what's possible. In terms of moving from one-off revenue to recurring revenue, lots of businesses we work with see that transaction cycle with their consumers as a one-time purchase. Well, using NFTs, rentable tokens, and some of the other standards that are being developed, you can actually turn that into a lifetime value, where every time assets and products move around, the originating company actually gains the benefit from that. And that takes us into what I would say is moving from static to dynamic markets. One of the things that is a product of tokenization that's not really talked about, I think, as much, is that everything becomes tradable. Everything becomes a market. And in the real world, that already makes lots of sense. All the physical things that you own have places that you can take them to if you want to trade them and move them on. And eventually, that will be the same with Web3. So thinking about your product and your business in these terms, I think, is really powerful. These are the economic drivers. One of the really important things, though, is brand advocacy. I think that Web3 is a unique moment in time where you can capture the hearts and minds of your customers, your users, the general populace, whoever's interacting with your product or service. I think the move that Patagonia have made in the last few weeks is amazing. I think it's an absolute game changer, and that's what corporate responsibility looks like. And the only critique I have on that very, very grand gesture is that it's been deployed as a trust and not as a DAO. I think in the future, for consumers to really buy into things, they won't have to believe in these legal structures that are being superimposed, but through a DAO where they have collective ownership over the shareholding, the voting, the governance, everything's taken care of. And I just think that's brand advocacy taken to an absolutely new height and a new level. So that's about turning followers into community, feedback into participation, and moving from a commercial relationship into aligned interests. I think one of the things that's interesting in the post-COVID era is that we don't want to be treated purely commercially by the brands that we're interacting with. We want to have a meaningful relationship with them. We want to feel involved in the direction of the products, like our voice is heard. And crypto and Web3 through DAOs gives us a unique opportunity to do that. So from a brand advocacy perspective, this is where you can build real value and utility with Web3. And then the last part of the framework maybe isn't as sexy and exciting as the other ones, but I think it is absolutely fundamental. And my mission is to drive mass adoption of Web3. And business resilience is something that is dramatically overlooked. Moving from a world where all of your data is centrally stored to a world where your data is distributed and decentralized massively, massively helps with business resilience. Web3 as a backup platform, if you like, as a disaster recovery mechanism. There are lots of edge case scenarios that need to be solved for that to become a true commercial reality, but it's undeniably where the industry's heading, and anybody building products at scale should really be thinking about it. Moving from manual decision-making to automatic decision-making, some of the most important decisions that businesses and companies need to make, and I go further and say governments as well, should be codified, should be automatically executed, and should not be reliant on humans to bring them to life, to trigger them. Again, with smart contracts and dApps, this is a truly unique opportunity to do that, to think about the most important things in our products and our services and in our communities, and automate them, encode them, and enshrine them on the blockchain so they can be executed as and when we need them. And then lastly, you could do a whole talk on this last point. In a normal software development world, we have a constant battle and a fight and a struggle to maintain security. It is an almost never-ending activity. And I know that this will probably draw a bit of heat given some of the recent news about hacks, but the blockchain is ostensibly secure by default. Some of the issues that you see in terms of hacks and security are around companies not following best practice and the industry learning how to communicate use cases to the general public. But we know that, in principle, it can and should be significantly more secure than a standard software development environment. So foundationally, even if you don't buy into tokenomics, you don't feel like you're trading NFTs, brand advocacy is not important for you. By the way, if it's not important for you, I think your company's probably going to be dead in 3 years. But business resilience should be, right? It should be something which is important to all of us. And I think it's absolutely something to take note of in terms of the utility of Web3. So these are just some of the benefits. This is just the beginning of a framework. And I think what's important is to stress that this is coming from over 10 years of running Calls9, my business, but over 20 years of actually building, deploying, and maintaining software at scale. And Web3, however you want to abstract it away, it's software. It's interacting with consumers, it's interacting with clients, it's interacting with the general public. The experience they have, the differentiated functionality, how you bring it together to build new market economics, build an amazing brand, a unique experience that only Web3 can create through that participatory effect, and then upgrading the business resilience of your company and your products. This is truly a very unique moment in time, and the people that get this right are, I think, the ones that really will be trailblazing in the years ahead. So to return to the opening question, should every product be a Web3 product? I think the reality of it is that in pure terms, no. But where we're going to end up is that every product will either be or contain Web3. So there are Web3 native products, and there are some amazing builders and founders here today who are really pushing the boundaries with dApps, DAOs, and all sorts of amazing technology. But for most people, what you want to be doing is saying, this is a foundational technology that probably needs to be in my product or service for functional, economic, brand, or resilience reasons. How do I do that? How do I integrate that into my technology so that I'm not missing out on these unique opportunities? We specialize in helping people get that right, and it is an art form as much as it is computer science. And our unique experience comes from that 10 plus years of working in the space. And we're here really today to make connections in the industry, to reach out to people, and to help them start to make this transition either to building a Web3 native product or to take their Web2 product and bring it into the modern era. So feel free to reach out to us through Telegram or WhatsApp. We're outside in the exhibition booth, and I don't know if I have time for questions, but if I do, I'm happy to answer any. So thank you for listening.
You can do questions. We've got time for a few questions if you fancy it.
Do we? Does anybody have any questions? Hi.
One issue that we're having currently is to move the Web2 player base to Web3. We are having lots of user experience difficulties, I would say, because even though the crypto natives are okay with the situation, the Web2 gamers are not. They are asking us, like, why I need a wallet, why I need to press so many buttons, why I cannot do one-click registration, or etc. So how you see this transition and how you think is going to be like a good way to move Web2 players who are not crypto natives into start to accept crypto features in their games? Sure.
So the question's really about the user experience for the Web2 users who and when you say clicking buttons, it's connecting wallets, and is it getting all of the usual Web3 things set up in a way? I don't know if I did that or not, but put that there. So I think initially there's probably two sets of things, right? You have to ask yourselves the hard question of why are you even doing it in the first place? You know, what value is that adding to the user base? And you might not want to say that right now, but knowing what that is, I then communicate that back to the users. The users need to understand why something is happening. I feel like, I've been building software for long enough that I remember there being no e-commerce, and then I remember e-commerce. And I remember when e-commerce first happened, everyone was like, wait a second, you're telling me that I'm going to go to a website, I'm going to put in my credit card details, I don't see the merchant, I don't know who they are, and I'm going to trust that it all happens. And we were like, yeah. And people were like, no. That is kind of where we are with this. So there's a communication piece, right? Users need to understand why you're doing it. In terms of the user experience, there are things you can do to streamline that onboarding. And I know we've got people from businesses like Consensus here who, obviously with MetaMask, are working on trying to improve that user experience. And that's a gap that needs closing. It's going to close, I believe, in the next 12 to 18 months because there's so much focus on it. But in the short term, the brand advocacy's got to come with you, telling the users why it's got utility, why it's important for the game, and just putting their minds at ease. And then I would build almost like fail-safes back into it so that as you transition, it's not a degenerative experience if they say they're not opting in or they're not connecting their wallet. You know, having a little bit of an on-ramp to get those users over is another strategy. And we've done that with a number of different businesses. So I could happily talk to you about that in more detail afterwards, if that's helpful.
Thank you. I think we'll end it there and give the guests a quick chance to grab some lunch.